Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Technology Evangelist podcast. I'm Dr. John Flucke, Technology Evangelist, and we are in this podcast being sponsored by my good buddies at Medidenta Digital. And today we're going to talk to somebody that I've gotten to know and be palsy-walsy with over the last 60 or 90 days. And it is Loren King. Loren is a hygienist. But she's also a lecturer, a consultant, and she works with Trust AI. So, Loren, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, my new bestie friend.
Oh, I love blatant kiss ups like that. That's awesome. So I'm gonna surprise you with something, Loren, because I didn't give you a heads up. No, it's okay. This isn't bad. What I always start out with is an origin story, because I think that it's interesting just for me, and I think people that watch this probably want to know too. And real quick, I do want to say we're going to talk about AI today, but we're also going to discuss a topic that Loren knows a lot about, which is human trafficking. And if she mentions this in her origin story, I just wanted to throw that out so everybody knew ahead of time. But I always like to know how in the world you got to where you are. So, get in the Wayback Machine, go as far back as you want to, and then tell us how you got here.
Wow. Well, a lot has happened. I feel like I've lived 50 lives in 33. I'll be 34 next month. But I think that I would start with where I started in dentistry. So I've been in dentistry for 14 years. I was an assistant first, and then I became a dental hygienist because I wanted more autonomy and I wanted to take care of patients myself. But I didn't want to go into more debt and become a dentist. And
Get that.
I knew that I wanted, if I were to go back to dental school, I would have had to specialize in order to be happy. I loved surgery as an assistant, but I went to dental hygiene school instead. And then 7 years ago, almost 7 years ago now, I became a public speaker. So, but for what I talk about in terms of human trafficking awareness is the biggest one now, as well as airway and sleep apnea. And recently is AI, or artificial intelligence, LLMs, large language models, that kind of AI. So for me, with human trafficking, there's no way to really beat around the bush with that. But I went through sexual assault as a child. And for me, when I first started learning about basically all of the problems in the world is what I wanted to talk about when I first started speaking. And I had a mentor come up to me and she was like, I'll teach you everything that I know, but you have to pick a topic, right?
Right.
Because I mean, the first time I spoke, it was for 10 minutes. It was Dentistry's Got Talent. I had no intentions of being a speaker. It was just suggested to me. But in 10 minutes, I talked about anything as far as how we can only see like a small percentage of our sky and how terrifying that should be, and how women are being enslaved in other countries, and human trafficking and abuse. And I quoted Matthew McConaughey, I quoted Tupac, I talked about AIDS in Africa and how they can't afford to be tested, which is what's causing it to be so rampant, and how do we stop that? And I wanted to solve a lot of things.
There are a lot of problems. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's a lot of problems, and I'm definitely one of those humans that actually believes she can change the world and make it a better place. I've felt like that since I was a kid. And so she told me, she was like, the way you pick the good topic for yourself is to pick one that you relate to the most, because that's going to be the one you speak the most authentically about, right? And as a speaker now, 100%, that's what I tell people, right? And so I told her, I was like, well, my own family doesn't even know this, but I went through sexual assault as a child. So to me, that would be somewhere in the realm of human trafficking, abuse, things like that.
Yeah.
And then when I started doing research on the signs of abuse and the likelihood that we would see trafficking and abuse in dentistry, I was livid, because no one was teaching it, no one was talking about it, and the numbers are just too high for us not to be talking about it. And these numbers are based on what we've caught. And to be quite frank with you, I don't know if people curse on this show, but
It's okay.
we haven't caught shit in trafficking. So these numbers are actually much, much higher than this, right? Because this is just based on the victims that we've rescued or that have been saved and that we've asked. And that number is not anywhere near how high it could be, but that number is that 30% of human trafficking victims reported that they visited a dentist while being trafficked.
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting stat because I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about, the statistics I've always seen just on dental visits in general is only 50% of the population sees a dental professional on a regular basis. That kind of gives you an idea of what the scope of the problem really is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And 80% reported that it was some type of healthcare provider.
Okay.
And they weren't rescued. It wasn't identified. And why is that? Well, knowing what I know now and what I've learned, we're not taught properly. And
I wasn't taught at all.
exactly, exactly. And I get it. It's a very dark subject.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have this mentality of if it's not happening to me, it's not happening. And I tell people all the time that that sentence is incomplete. It's until it does, and then it's too late.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get our industry to recognize these things before they have a potential victim in their chair so that they feel comfortable enough and brave enough to and prepared enough to do something, right? Because a lot of it's fear based of I don't want to get involved. What if I do the wrong thing? If you are properly trained, you will not feel that way. If you are not properly trained on what to do, of course you feel inadequate. Of course you feel terrified because you're not skilled in what you're doing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a much lesser example, but that's why we're required to do CPR training.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want you to have to, what do I do? How do I do that? I've never seen this before. And I've seen some situations in my office where, patients have passed out, and I've had, incidents where I wasn't in the room when it happened and somebody runs to me in a panic and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Jones is unconscious in 4. What do I do? And you've got to prepare. And the only way to be prepared is to, have the knowledge, rehearse, do all that. So yeah,
Exactly.
I agree with that totally.
Exactly. And I think that our industry is starting to come around. I'm not the only one speaking on this topic. There are other people in the industry that are talking on it. Thank goodness. It's like some people they ask if that bothers me. I'm like, absolutely not, because if there's more people that are willing to talk about this, one, that's incredible because most people are like, heck no, I'm not talking about this, especially to a room full of people. But
Right.
also, I know full and well that I'm meant to speak to some human beings on this planet, not every human being on this planet. So there
Right.
needs to be other people speaking on it because I could literally say the exact same statistics, the exact same pieces of education that someone else is saying, but it's not going to resonate with them because it's not coming from their voice, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And on top of that, it's the fastest growing organized crime in the world. It's a $150 billion industry. We
Oh,
need millions of people talking about it.
we do. Yeah.
So,
I will admit that the first time, I mean, I had seen some news stories
mhm.
about human trafficking. I think we probably all have. If you look at, headlines at all. But I didn't think, and then I was in an airport. I don't even know when. It was quite a while ago. But in
Mhm.
the bathrooms in the airport, there were these signs that, said, if you're being trafficked. And I thought to myself, okay, if they're putting this in airport restrooms, the problem is a lot bigger than I thought it was.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what brought my awareness. I mean, at least my awareness up of it, but I certainly don't know enough about it. So when you're out and you're talking to people about this, where do you start? I mean, how does somebody in our field recognize the signs and then what do they do to help?
So the last time I spoke on human trafficking was for the AZDA. I taught for almost 3 hours. It was the longest that I had spoken on human trafficking, but honestly, it was incredible because I had enough time to one take my time. Otherwise, it's kind of like drinking water through a fire hose,
Sure.
and I don't like to do that because it is a heavy topic, and I don't want to just dump and leave type of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm always ending up like staying after people want to talk to me about their own stories and their own things that have happened to them that they haven't told anyone on the planet. You know, it's there's definitely a lot of quote unquote aftercare in terms
Yeah.
of a course like this, and I'm happy to do it. Um, but in that course, I'm able to go from A to Z in terms of what is it, why does it matter that we need to know what it is and how to identify it, what causes it, and the misconceptions of trafficking, down
Mhm.
to most people refer to it as sex trafficking, and that's incorrect. It's human trafficking for a reason because there's actually over 10 different kinds of trafficking. Sex trafficking is only about a quarter of trafficking. The biggest
Oh,
portion of it is forced labor. So just educating our industry on how misconstrued and misinformed they are and that it's not their fault. No one's teaching this. No one wants to teach this. And a lot of times they say it's because, well, we don't want to leave the audience defeated or we don't want them to feel helpless. I'm like, they absolutely will not feel that way when they leave my course. I can't speak for anyone else, but I make it a priority to equip them with the knowledge, the power, the skills, the psychological aspect behind it in terms of what it means to be a victim, what it means when you're getting involved, those kinds of things, right? So where they understand it so that it's not so foreign, but also getting them to understand that it's just as bad here as it is anywhere else. And if anything, if you were to ask me, I think it's worse in some capacities because it's happening in plain sight because we were ignorant to it. There's no other way to put it,
yeah.
respectfully.
Yeah.
We are ignorant to it and we don't understand. But we also have that mentality I was talking about of we don't pay attention to anything outside of our own scope
Right.
of life. And the biggest portion about how I teach it is I give a very visual, very audible course. And in some states in our industry, my course would not be suggested because of that. Uh, and the reason is, and I totally understand, and everybody has to do what they have to do, but
Sure.
they don't want me to re-traumatize a possible victim. And I get that. But at the same time, with it being the fastest growing organized crime in the world, with us potentially seeing 30% of trafficking victims, and like I said, that number is staggeringly higher than that. I respectfully cannot be thinking about that with adults that I'm
Mhm.
educating that are willingly coming to the course, right?
Yeah.
And that sounds how it sounds, and I know how it sounds. And as a victim of abuse, I definitely know I'm re-traumatizing myself every time I talk
Right.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you don't know what it looks like, you will not spot it. Period.
You know, I mean, it's interesting because everybody that's watching this that's in dentistry is going to know that it's like when we talk to people now, all you notice is their smile, or it's the first thing you notice, and you lock in on it. And in fact, I've got a friend, kind of a funny story. He the girl he ended up marrying had a really badly shade matched composite on one of her front teeth. And on their first date, he was like, if we're going to keep going out, I got to fix that. And it's, but if you're not trained in what we do, then I always tell people that you can sometimes look at somebody's smile and go, there's something about that that's not right.
Mhm.
But when you're trained for it, you're like, okay, I see that, you're a little protrusive, or, you've got some class 2 division 2 going on, whatever. And I know how to fix that. But it's because I'm trained. And yeah, if you don't know what the symptoms are, if you don't know the questions to ask of your patients, um, then you don't see it.
Right.
And we only see what we're trained to see or what we think
Exactly.
about.
Exactly. And it's not your fault. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
But I'm trying to equip you with the visual memory of
Hmm.
what abuse looks like on the body, of what majority of the injuries in abuse are to the head and the neck and inside the mouth. If you don't know what those things look like and you think it's just a random bruise, you don't understand that pattern bruising in a baby 4 months or younger is the highest form of like sign of abuse that you could get. You're just going to think, oh, maybe they fell on their head. Well,
Right.
what I'm going to teach you is that if they're 4 months or younger, where is an infant 4 months or younger typically at all times? They're usually in someone's arms or they're in a
Hmm.
crib. So explain to me how pattern bruising gets there, right? I'm not saying that it's a smoking gun
Right.
necessarily. I kind of consider it to be a smoking gun just because of
Sure.
what I know.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be alarmed at a minimum.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start asking a lot of open-ended questions to whoever I'm
Yep.
seeing the infant with, which is another thing that I teach. But if you don't know these things, you're like, oh, they probably fell out of their crib, or
Yeah.
oh, they probably hit their head on something. It's like, no, an infant is in the crib or in someone's arm. That doesn't make sense.
Well, and I mean, I'll throw it back to dentistry just again for a second. When I'm diagnosing endo problems, not everybody comes in with a massive hole in their tooth and an exposed pulp.
Mhm.
And so I got a series of things and a series of tests I do, and I always tell my patients, I'm like, what I'm doing here is it's the duck thing. I start looking at, I'm like, okay, it has feathers, it flies, it has a
Exactly.
bill, it quacks, it swims in the water. Before long, you've got enough of those variables answered that then you can
Yep.
say it's a duck.
This is a duck.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. It's like you
Mhm.
said, you see one thing and you're like, okay, well then now I need to find out X because I'm just moving. Basically, you're moving down the diagnostic chain with this. You're just
Exactly.
diagnosing a different kind of problem.
Exactly. And I do teach it in levels, right? So back to you were asking me how, how to go about it or how I go about it when
Yes.
I teach
Yeah,
it.
please.
So definitely very A to Z of this is why, this is what you need to look for. This is what it actually looks like. This is what it could possibly sound like. This is what the energy of what you're feeling could possibly feel like.
Hmm.
The misconceptions and the myths of trafficking of, it's usually somebody when I went through sexual assault as a child twice, it was by two different extended family members each time. And that's one of the reasons why I tell that story, because in trafficking, that's typically how it starts. It's a family member starts with abuse and then they learn they can make money off of you. You're easily manipulated and you trust them because they're not going to hurt you, right? They
Right.
would never put you in a situation where you shouldn't you shouldn't be in, right?
Right.
So it makes perfect sense. It's not you're just snatched off the road by someone you don't know. Does that happen? Absolutely. But is it common in trafficking? No, it's not. It's usually by some type of manipulation or coercion, or it's actually done off of trust, right? So,
Yeah.
but then going into okay, what to do if you start seeing these yellow flags of
Right.
is what I call them.
Okay.
I teach to assess. I never want you to assume.
Hmm.
Assuming is how you get yourself hurt, how you get
Yep.
a victim hurt, how you make something worse. But also knowing we need to assess, because if they're over the age of 18, we cannot intervene unless something life threatening is going on
Right.
because they're a consenting adult. We can give them resources. I tell them if it were me, I would give them my phone number. Please reach out if you ever need anything. Call and check on them. Be the advocate for the patient, right? But we
Right.
cannot intervene past that if they're over 18 without their consent. So knowing those different levels of we need a protocol in place in the office, we need signs in the office. I don't advocate for the signs that have the hotline on it.
Hmm.
I want offices to have, and I tell them all the time, you can print these offline or you can make them yourself. I said, but you need to have the ones that have the universal signal, hand signal of help or distress, which is you don't have to be perfect. It's this, right? It's your
Okay.
thumb in and these four fingers flashing like this.
Okay. I just learned
So
that. I didn't know that.
see,
Thank you.
And there's scenarios where I've seen on like Instagram, TikTok, where people are posting videos of it, of social experiments. And they're walking with, this is somebody they actually know, they're not in harm's way,
Right, right,
but they're walking down the street and they're doing this behind their back to people that are passing them, and nobody does anything because nobody knows what it is. And then like one or two people stop and they like physically take them away from that person because they know what it indicates.
right.
So even in the airports, like eventually the nonprofit that I'm trying to get off the ground, Finding Anon, part of the industries that we will be educating is the airway industry, because they're also not trained properly. Every time I fly to go speak, you chat with people, you're on the road, you chat
Yeah,
with flight attendants, you chat with pilots, you chat with
yeah,
the gate agents, they see you dressed up. Sometimes I'm in a suit, sometimes I'm in sweatpants. It doesn't, it's just different. If
yeah.
I'm more dressed up, they usually ask, what are you traveling for? Or what do you do? And just hearing how uneducated they are in something that they probably see on a daily basis.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah, in that industry especially.
Right. Is terrifying. Right. But so going down the protocol of having those signs in your office, put them in the bathroom, but make sure that it's not just the hotline that you can text and call, because at the end of the day, most victims are not going to have a phone. They're not going to have a way to advocate for themselves in that way unless they've built a lot of trust with their handler, which does happen. It takes time, it takes a lot of
Sure.
manipulation, but traffickers are very smart. Most of them are very narcissistic. They're con men and women.
Right.
Traffickers are just as many women, if not more, than men that are handlers. And there's a reason for that if you think about the psych behind it, which is women are quote unquote more soft.
Yep.
And to gain someone's trust as a woman is much easier than a man, unless you're
I get that completely.
yeah, unless you're extremely charming, extremely soft, or more like I call it femme type of
Yeah.
masculine.
Mhm.
So it makes a lot of sense that they're the brains behind a lot of the operation. Um, but after that, it's okay, when do we involve the authorities? When do we just
Yeah.
involve the human trafficking hotline? And I distinguish it like this: if you have multiple assessment yellow flags and they're stacking and you're unsure still, call the human trafficking hotline and ask them. They're the experts. That's literally what they're there for 24/7, is to be your resource of, I would say we need to monitor this situation. Give me the patient's info so that I can follow up myself. Let the experts handle it, right? But if you have a victim that you start asking them non-judgmental, open-ended questions because you see all these yellow flags and you're
Right.
concerned, and you've learned how to separate the victim from the handler, which I also teach in the protocol, then you can get them alone and you can ask them as quickly as you can, because you may not have that much time.
Right.
If they don't know what this is, they can't
Mhm.
flash this at you. But if they, hopefully, maybe they just saw that sign in your bathroom. So
Right.
maybe they come back and they do this to you. So now we're going to implement protocol where we're going to start separating the victim
Right.
and the handler. There was an office in Arizona that took my course last summer, and they caught someone. They had to hide her in their back office, and they were.
So real quickly, I know I'm interrupting, but I
No, it's
just want
okay.
to ask, because you talk about separating. So I would think that most times in a situation like this, somebody brings a patient to the office and then they need to come back with them.
Mhm.
Is that kind of the thing, so that they, because they don't want to let the victim loose with strangers for fear of what they'll say. So they want to come back and, act like a concerned, I don't know, parent, boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. Is that kind of the way it usually goes?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So the psych behind it that I've studied is that it depends on what point they're at in the cycle.
Okay.
If they've been with them for years, which is usually the case, they've built trust,
Okay.
and they see this person at their handler. They see the handler as someone that they can't live without, that would never hurt them, or they've manipulated them in a way of saying, if I get caught, you're going to jail too, because
Right.
you're doing X, Y, and Z. Either you're illegal, you're basically prostituting yourself, or whatever it is that they've done
Right.
to manipulate the victim.
Wow.
Or they've brainwashed them in such a way that anyone of authority is a bad guy. They're going to hurt you.
Oh,
That includes healthcare professionals.
okay. Makes sense.
They don't actually have your best interest in mind. I do. And it just depends on the relationship.
Okay.
It is definitely a relationship. But if it's newer in that relationship, or they're just, that trust hasn't been established, then yes, the handler
Okay.
would be with them at all times. They would definitely look to them before they talk to you, before they look
Right.
at you, before they answer you, or they may not look at you at all. Where this gets a little dicey is at cultural aspects of it, where
Sure.
there's some cultures where the wife does not answer, they look to their husband
Yeah. Yeah.
before, right? So you have to
Yep.
that's like kind of why you need to be educated in these things, because
Yeah.
there's so many aspects of the psychological aspect behind it, and the cultural aspect, and just the manipulation aspect. Like they're psychopaths usually, sociopaths. They're con men and women. They're very charming. They're very well put together. And in terms of the victims, people ask me all the time, well, why would they be coming to the dentist? Like, why would they want to take them in public? Why would they take
Right.
them to the doctor? And a lot of the things that I say sound how they sound, and I'm totally
Yeah.
okay with that. But you have to think about it like selling a product.
Mm-hmm.
You have to maintain the product in order to get a high price for it.
Yeah.
That includes a human body, right?
Right.
They need to regularly get their teeth cleaned. They need to sometimes go get plastic surgery done. Sometimes they're coming in and paying cash for all on X, or some kind of like extreme rehabilitation or transformation. They're getting breast implants, or they're, coming in for trauma. That's different. If they're over 18 and they come in and they have a broken jaw, or there's something life threatening going on, all bets are off at that
Okay.
point. There's so much that goes into it. I think you can see how I can talk on this for hours.
Well, let me ask you this. How long, if somebody called you and they said, we want you to come and give us, maybe I shouldn't say as much info as you've got, because that might take days, but in all seriousness, could you do a whole day on this? I would think you very easily could.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, there you go. Meeting planners that are watching this, I've got your whole day program. Those are a little harder to find nowadays. So
you absolutely could.
Okay.
How would I do it? Because I haven't done it. Because I feel like meeting planners are, once they take a course, and this just happened in Arizona, once they take a course and they see the impact and how there is a way not to leave your audience feeling defeated or worse.
Yeah.
You can actually, a lot of my audience comes up to me afterwards and they're pissed. They are so angry that no one's teaching this. They're so angry that they've never been taught in school, that they're missing this. They're furious and they want to do something. Some of them, of course, there's going to be a small percentage, I would say, that they don't want to get involved, right? They're terrified. Maybe they're triggered. I don't know what it is. I don't ask. It's not my business. But it is a very small percentage. So I think the way you would go about it would be to do more of a didactic part of it for the first 1 to 3 hours, and then put them in scenarios in groups of, this is the scenario, you're the victim, you're the dentist, or you're the hygienist, or you're the front desk, because I go down every single role in the practice and I give each of them things to look for specifically that only they would see.
Yeah, and that makes sense because we're all interacting with them in different ways, in different
100%.
environments. Yeah. And I think it's kind of interesting sometimes where some patient personalities will not get along with the front desk, but they'll get along fine with the clinical team. And then sometimes you have folks that are fine with the front desk and, they're just difficult with the clinical team. And why those personalities are the way they are, I don't know, but it does exist because I've seen it.
And it might be the only time that the handler is not around. Maybe they walked in and they're sitting up front in the reception office and the handler needed to go to the bathroom. So they have a split second to do this to the front desk.
Yeah.
Right. They're not
Yeah.
waving at you. They're letting you know that they're in distress and they
Well,
need help.
and one of the other things, Loren, that I've read more about in the last couple of years, because I know that CNN did an expose on this and the New York Times did as well, is this whole thing of the internet scamming, where they're getting, like, there was one just recently that I read where there was a gentleman in India, smart guy, had an IT degree. Um, he was out of work and he saw this great ad. He moved to, I can't think of the country. It's a country that borders Myanmar. I don't remember which one it was, but they were
Remind
like,
me where Myanmar is.
Myanmar is near India.
Oh, India. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure, but I think it borders like Cambodia, maybe
Okay.
Thailand. But there was an ad like, move to this country, we're looking for IT professionals, great benefits, great salary. And this guy shows up and he's met at the airport by a driver, and they get in a car, and he said that, well, I kind of, because he managed to get out of this long term, but he said, I kind of thought, I thought my job was in the city. We're going way out. They crossed the border into Myanmar, and the next stop was like a compound. It was like a prison.
Mhm.
And basically, it was full of people. And they were like, your job is now to get on Facebook, to get on Instagram, to impersonate, like, a beautiful woman or whatever, and suck people into giving you money.
Yep.
And I think he was there for like 2 or 3 years, and he managed to somehow negotiate like a cash settlement to get out or something. But he just talked about, like, they worked them 12-hour days. The compound literally they lived in was like a prison. It was walled with barbed wire. There were guards, and they were just forced to try and fleece people out of their money. And this gentleman wouldn't give his name. He was terrified, if people found out who he was. But he'd been through this horrible trauma. And one of the things he said was, in the guilt of me, I was actually convincing people to send money,
Yeah.
and the guilt of that he was doing that too was just horrible on him. So it's like you said, it's not just, prostitution that this happens with. It happens in a lot of different industries, and it happens to people who are smart. It's not, some yokel that doesn't know any better and gets in a car with a stranger, and the next thing you know.
Exactly. A lot of times, and what you're describing is forced labor, which is
Yes.
the biggest portion of trafficking. There's a movie, everyone knows The Sound of Freedom because of Hollywood.
Mhm.
I'm actually not a big advocate for that movie
Okay.
because I think all education is great. Let me say that.
Sure.
But we have to do more. It's too fast. It's growing too much. They're still winning, right?
Right.
In that movie, in my opinion, and this is just me,
Yeah.
in my opinion, it makes it seem like it's still only happening in other countries.
Hmm.
And that's not the case. The movie that I prefer, and I actually know the director, we may do some work together here in the next year or so when Finding Anon gets off the ground, the nonprofit that I'm starting. But please watch City of Dreams.
Okay.
He did an incredible job at getting people to understand that it's happening just as bad here in plain sight as anywhere else. And the way that they went about it, I won't tell the whole story, but
Sure.
please watch it. I think it's on Amazon for sure. I know that. But
Okay.
so there was a little boy who was working basically in the fields and things like that in Mexico. And the way that they would recruit these younger boys is to promise them that if they came with them to LA and worked in a fashion shop, that they would help them become a professional soccer player. They
Wow.
had pamphlets. And throughout the movie, this boy is like clinging to this pamphlet while he's going through this. And the house that they're in is literally on a super nice street in Los Angeles. And that's the reality, right? That's a
Yeah.
very realistic scenario that's happening all day, every single day. And it's like what you're saying. They prey on the vulnerable, they prey on you're in a bad position, they prey on your dreams, your hopes, how you want to be. There's another movie, not movie, I think it's a documentary. It's called Dancing with the Devil. And it's on Netflix. It was
Okay.
about the cult. It was a religious cult, with all of the dancers on TikTok that were famous during COVID. So they had to
I've
come.
heard of this one. Yeah,
Yeah.
please go ahead. Go ahead.
So I posted about it because as soon as I watched it, I was like, this is trafficking. This is not a cult. But because of society and because of all the rules that we've man-made and all of these
Right.
things, you can't call it trafficking because it's a cult, and that makes it untouchable. Or it's religious. It's what they're doing for their religion.
Yeah.
They're supposed to give this man, the priest, pastor, whatever he was, a penance. But it was leaving them with pennies to live off of. And they were literally doing all the work. That's forced labor
Yeah.
with a religious bow and a cult bow on top of it.
It's a great way of putting it.
But you know, it's just,
Yeah.
but we don't know. We don't know.
Well, you and I were together at an event a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking. And I know I mentioned to you at the time, and I want you to cover this a little bit, that I read an article, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but about the Super Bowl and how that at these big sporting events that, thousands of people go to and everyone knows they're going to spend money, that the traffickers show up. Now this is sex trafficking, I think most times, but they just show up. It's like you said, it's like, okay, I've got a product and the consumers are all going to be in city X, for the next 7 days.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was, I think part of the problem we have with this subject is that, because I don't think like a trafficker, I don't think like a consumer of that kind of stuff, I guess. Side story. I went to Bass Pro one time and I bought a tackle box, and I got to the checkout counter and I put the tackle box up, and it was a big one, had all these drawers in it. And this nice gal at the checkout counter, she turns it around and she's looking at it and she's opening all the drawers. And I just thought, well, they want to make sure that maybe it wasn't damaged or all the drawers work or something. And I said to her, I said, that's really cool. You're making sure all the drawers open and close. And she looked at me like I was an idiot. And she goes, no, I'm looking to make sure there's nothing in them.
Yep.
And I said, well, I didn't put anything in them. I can just tell you that. And she goes, you would if you were trying to steal it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, people do that?
Yeah.
And she was like, every day. Anyway, so my whole point was I was just so stupid because I don't think like I'm going to steal something, that I don't see people stealing, or I don't see opportunities.
Right.
But when, you're involved in this and that's your mindset, then, oh, you see yeah.
A good rule of thumb with like what you're talking about with sporting events, what I tell people is look at it this way, or keep this in mind for future reference. If there's a lot of money being spent around a lot of people, there's a lot of trafficking happening. That's the rule of thumb.
I can see that. Anytime there's a lot of money, there's going to be things that are unethical and immoral going on. I mean,
yeah, with the big audiences, especially. So sporting events, concerts, anything where you can snatch and grab really quick. And people are, they're in a euphoric state of mind. They're distracted. They're in a good mood. They're like, of course, nothing's going to happen right now. Stuff like that. So a good rule of thumb, if there's a lot of people in one place, there's a lot of trafficking happening.
Well, and the weird thing for me would be if you had said to me before I saw this article or before I talked to you, if you said, they sell more, like they sell more, I don't know, Grey Goose vodka at, whatever site of the Super Bowl is, that's the city of the highest consumption in the United States for that year. I would have said, well, of course, all these people and they're all drinking. Of course, there's a lot of alcohol. Or if you said, the highest sales of illicit substances were, in that city, I'd go, well, yeah, people are there, they're partying, they want to have a good time, they're kind of pushing the envelope. But it never, because I'm naive, it never occurred to me that the trafficking thing would be there. And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that, but
no, don't be. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, I'm a Midwest guy. I grew up in a Catholic family. I don't think like that. And it's just, kind of funny. I honestly, it's a little embarrassing because it's like, I like to think I'm a semi-smart guy. You think I would have figured that out, but I didn't.
It's
And
not normative conversation.
yeah, well, and that's why I'm so glad you're here because, open people's eyes and let them come find you when you're out and about and find out more about it. So before we move on and get a little bit into AI, I want to ask, so you mentioned your nonprofit.
Yep.
Tell me just a little bit about that before we move on, like how people can find it, what you're doing, all that kind of stuff, because that's important.
Absolutely. So Finding Anon is the 501(c)(3) that I'm in the process of founding. It takes months. It takes thousands of dollars.
Yes.
You have to have actual advisors for a nonprofit. It drives me insane that you can start a for-profit company online in a couple of hours, and me
Yep.
trying to start a nonprofit that is going to raise money to stop a problem is like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
It's like, it's ridiculous how long of a process it is. But what the focus will be is this. So I've been speaking on human trafficking for 7 years, and I just started getting paid for it probably 3 years ago. And it's very volatile, as you know, as a speaker.
Mhm.
1 month you can make 10K, 1 month you make literally zero, and
Yeah.
months, right?
Yeah.
So, or for me, for years, I was going into the red, right? I was going into debt trying to do this. But what I will say, if you want to become a speaker and these things start happening to you, you will know if this is your purpose or not, because it's going to either trigger your grit or it won't.
Yep.
And for me, it did. I couldn't stop. I tried to walk away from it. Of course, it's not easy, but I
Sure.
couldn't, right? But in this last year alone, there were 7 different speaking opportunities in other countries in the dental industry that wanted me to come speak on trafficking, but I had to say no because they couldn't afford to get me there.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to some people that are now advisors of mine for Finding Anon, and I was like, this can't be the reason why I can't go do this. I refuse to let that happen. So how do I fix it? Because I'm not an expert in business. I'm not an expert in funding. I'm not an expert in any of the things that we just learned at the KOL event that we went to.
Right.
Right. I'm the expert on modern day slavery, and I'm willing to talk about it from skyscrapers with a microphone.
Sure.
But I have to be able to take care of myself at the same time in order to show up for other
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that's what Finding Anon is about. So anyone that donates to us will get the tax write-off because it will be a federally recognized nonprofit. I will pull a salary from some of that, and it'll be a lot of policy change, education, awareness. One of the initiatives will be to get it required in all 50 states to be a required CE. Right now, it's only a handful of states require it. So we would be lobbying and petitioning, all of these things. And then there will be a for-profit side for it later, years down the road, which actually this will segue into Trust AI, because I would only be working for Trust AI because of my career in human trafficking, where one of the founders was able to find me. So there will be a technology side called Anon. It's an AI, a facial recognition AI. And the way that it works is we have digital patient charts now, right?
Right.
And in the digital patient charts, we have our patient photos, right? It's to prevent insurance fraud, to make sure we have the right patient, to be able to identify the patient, all these things.
Right.
So Anon, the facial recognition AI, will take that patient photo, the digital patient photo, and it will cross-reference it to the global missing persons database. If there's a match, Anon will then pass it to our human team. Our human team will confirm it, and our interception team will go save that victim. So that's the big goal.
Right.
And it is a big goal, and it's going to take time. But I'm lucky because I'm meeting people like my CEO, Bernard, who is I'm convinced, one of the smartest human beings on the planet, in terms of many things, but definitely technology and AI. And he was like, Loren, we could build this for you. Like, this is an easy day in the tech world. And I'm over here like, this seems impossible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like, how?
See, you don't know what you don't know again, right?
Exactly. I'm now, and I feel like I told you this, or maybe it was Marty, but I said, I will always be a student. I don't ever want to be the expert. I honestly don't. Because once I start calling myself that, that means I'm no longer learning. And that actually
Right.
means that I am not the expert anymore.
Right.
in my opinion. So, but with Trust AI to kind of to segue, so that's
Yeah.
Finding Anon and that's Anon. And hopefully by beginning of 2026, it'll be federally recognized. So Darius Sumpkin and I probably just
Yeah.
butchered his last name. But we want to throw a gala for the dental industry to kick it off, to start the fundraising. We're looking at maybe getting a Nobel Peace Prize winner to come speak, or someone influential to kind of drive the audience to want to attend. But that's that side of it. And then how it segued into Trust AI is Divian, our chief clinical officer and one of our co-founders. He was introduced to me by Darius last year because he wanted to fight the fight of human trafficking awareness and all of that too.
Yeah.
And then recently over the summer with Trust AI, he was like, hey, we need a speaker to teach on AI for or on cloud dentistry's webinar.
Yeah.
Bernard, our CEO, happened to be on the webinar, and here we are. So it's just it's so cool to me. And I told the team this too. I was like, it just feels like right people, right time for the right reasons. Right.
It's amazing, I think, how that happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how all these little, sometimes these serendipitous events all of a sudden just come together in a happenstance to fuse. And I'm a really big believer in what the heck, you know, and I've said this on the podcast before, but some of the best things that have happened to me personally and professionally have been times when I was like, I don't know that I'm, you know, ready for that, but what the heck, you know, and then something great comes out of it. And so I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
Really, truly am. And for regular watchers, Bernard has been a guest on the podcast before.
I heard it was great.
Yeah. His as Loren and I speak today, his appearance is in post-production, so it's not available yet, but it will be shortly. It actually may be on before this one, Loren. But if you're watching this and you haven't had a chance to watch Bernard yet, you know, go to Spotify or Apple and you'll find it there. It's a really interesting discussion. The dude is crazy smart.
He's one of the best leaders I've ever worked for, too.
And you know, he's not only smart, but he can articulate. Sometimes smart people, you know, it's all in here and they have a hard time getting that out. And then there's people like me that have nothing in here, but can all come out here.
That is not true.
But he's got the gift of being able to not only do the stuff, but then, you know, explain the stuff to people. And that's really cool. So just to kind of get into the AI piece of it a little bit, and where do you see, as somebody that is around it constantly now, where do you see AI impacting dentistry, like in, I don't know, let's say the near future? Because I know most times now, if you mention AI to somebody in dentistry, they'll go, oh yeah, x-rays. You know, x-rays and chat GPT maybe, you know, or whatever. But I'm glad you smiled, because but I really do. When I talk to people, that's kind of what it seems like. So
they don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
They don't know what's out there.
So give people a little snippet of what they don't know, if you can.
So with what we're doing at Trust AI specifically, I can't speak for other companies or what they're doing. But there isn't a system so far that's been created where it's all encompassing. It's actually continuously learning. It's true generative adaptive artificial intelligence. It's a brain in itself, right? And it's learning as you're using it. It's adapting as you're giving it feedback. And one way that I like to explain it, just to put into perspective of what we currently have in dentistry and what we're bringing to the market, is like a landline phone and an iPhone. So Bernard calls this the iPhone moment of dentistry, and I agree with him. So what does that mean? the AI that we currently have, which we had to start somewhere, right?
Sure.
And I'm grateful for it, but it's evolving, and we have to evolve with it, or we get left
Right.
behind, right? Or we get outcompeted, or something like that. But
Right.
so a landline phone compared to an iPhone, what do I mean by that? With a landline phone, once it's created, that's all it can be used for. It's plugged into the wall, it's used as a phone. You can dial out, you can receive calls in, but in order for it to have anything else in terms of capabilities, adaptability, continuous learning, it would literally have to be unplugged from the wall and completely remade from the ground up, right?
Right.
With an iPhone, you can plug it in at night and wake up in the morning and there's new updates on it,
Yeah.
right? There's new features on it. You can use it for different things. It's become more intelligent overnight by one update. That's the difference. That's what we're creating in the most basic way to describe the
Yeah.
difference.
No, I think that's a great description. And you know, what I've been telling people for a while is that, you know, when I first got into CAD CAM in dentistry,
Mhm.
what we had to do was you had the acquisition unit, which now everybody calls the intraoral scanner, but back then we called them acquisition units. And it had a camera, but it also had a pedal. And you
Mhm.
would, you know, put the camera in the patient's mouth and angle the camera a certain way, you know, just like make a crown, and you hit the pedal and it would take a picture. And then you would move the camera, hit the pedal, and it'd take a picture. And did it work? Oh yeah, it worked, you know, it worked very well. But it didn't stop there, you know.
Mhm.
And now we're to the point where we've got these little wireless things, you know, they're about the size of like a Sonicare toothbrush,
Yep.
and you put it in the mouth and it's taking millions of images a second. The
Mhm.
minute it, you know, it sees things, it knows what tooth you're on. You know, if you're scanning and then suddenly you pick it up and you flip it over and you scan something else, it goes, oh, wait a minute, whoop. Okay, we're in a totally different area. You're up in the upper left now. And
Yep.
that, you know, did the originals work? Oh yeah, they worked
Of
great.
course, they served a purpose. We had to
Exactly.
start somewhere.
Yeah, but they evolved. And
Yeah.
that's the thing I think that people really need to know about artificial intelligence. I think your landline and iPhone thing is a great description, because there's so much coming that people just don't realize. Dentistry, there's like a big wave or a big hill, and we are like just teeter-tottering right on the crest of that. And we are about to go, whew, and it's going to be an incredible ride.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited about it. And I think as an educator in this moment of this space and this topic of artificial intelligence, I'm doing my best to keep the mindset, and I'm trying to get others to see this too. We don't have to kill each other along the way.
Right.
And if we would band together instead,
Yep.
entire profession would be better for it. And just like with me speaking on human trafficking, and there's other people speaking on human trafficking, there are so many people speaking on AI now. That's okay, because we're all
Yeah.
teaching different ways, different things. We're going to resonate with different people. I'm focusing more on LLMs, large language models, and more like continuous learning type of AI,
Right.
which we're not really learning in dentistry just yet. Prompt engineering is another thing that I'm planning to focus on, because in the tech industry, I'm sure you've heard, I forgot who it was that said it, but they basically said that learning how to prompt engineer will be just as important as knowing how to read and write in the
Yeah.
next 5 years or
I
so.
don't know who said it either, honestly, but I
Yeah.
know I've heard that. And it's
Yeah.
so true. I mean, you know, it's interesting. I have a creative side. It's funny because I can't draw. In fact, if I ever have to draw anything for patients, I always tell them, I just, it's going to look weird. I draw stick teeth because I have no artistic ability, but I love photography, and I've gotten into AI generation of images.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I do a lot of like cartoon characters, and I'll see somebody's, you know, like just stunning thing, and I'm like, wow, how'd you do that? What did you ask for? And the response is always like, well, you got to know the prompts.
Yes.
So yeah, there you go.
That's exactly what I taught when we did the cloud dentistry webinar. It was so cool to see. One, we got hundreds of signups like immediately. It was an hour webinar. But what mattered more to me and now, the team, what they told me that they were impressed with was they were actually using Isaac, and they were using it how I taught them to use it, which was, and Bernard says this, and I love it, it's garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
Right. So
it applies to anything.
Anything. And with AI, it's critical because if you're not getting very specific, then it will not specifically answer you.
Yeah.
Right. So I was teaching them, don't just ask a question. Is this what I should do for this implant placement? Say, I'm a dentist in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. There's no one else I can refer to. If something goes wrong in this surgery, I'm going to have to figure it out. Then ask your question and watch the difference in the answers, right? So they were doing that. They were getting super specific with Isaac and then answering their question. So what I learned in that moment as an educator is we're starting from zero. Nobody understands this, and it's already evolving. So we really need to do a good job in being able to create that value and that urgency of this is happening. It's already here. Don't see it as a threat.
Right.
It's meant to be a tool, and you're always going to be the decision maker unless you do let it take over.
Right.
I'm not promising you that will never happen. I can't do that.
Right.
But what I can promise you is we will stay in control longer if we adapt with it versus try to fight it.
Yeah. The prompt thing makes me think of a story. I had a staff member come to me one time years ago, and she walked into my office, into my personal office. And I think it was at lunch. I know there were no patients in the office at the time. And she's like, I don't feel right. And she kind of looked a little spacey or something. I was like, okay, what's wrong? Well, I feel odd. And I said, well, describe odd. And she's like, I feel off. And I was like, okay, give me some more. And she's like, well, I just don't, I just feel kind of weird. And finally I was like, is your heart racing? Are you hot? Are you sweating? And it's kind of the same thing with AI. If you don't give it the information it needs with the prompts or whatever, then, because basically, I mean, not to make fun of this poor gal, because I think the world think the world of her, but she was giving me garbage, and I couldn't, I couldn't get any healthcare decisions off of what I was getting.
Right.
So it's really important to, like you said, learn the prompts.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I want to bring up too is in the whole digital dentistry thing, AI penetration into that market has been so amazing in like the last 5 years that a lot of people are kind of afraid of, oh, I don't know if I want to get into doing anything in my office. And it's like, right now, you can pretty much design like bleaching trays and occlusal guards, and you just click next because the systems are so smart. Complicated things you have to tinker with, but a lot of the easy things, a low-hanging fruit, it's just a matter of going next, 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 and the machines are now smart enough to do that. But it is a tool. I like to tell people that when you're using artificial intelligence in dentistry, it's like an explorer or a perio probe.
Could be.
The perio probe doesn't tell you need to scale a root plane, or you need to do surgery. What it gives you is data. It
helps you figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it of a certain depth? Yes. Is it bleeding? Yes. Well, that's data that says inflammation, but the tools don't tell you what to do. You, the human being, with that knowledge base is what tells you what to do. And you've got to learn to work with the tools. And this is no different. I mean, it's the same with scanners. Intraoral scanners are, at least 50% of the market, depending on what survey you look at. And so people are going to have to learn to use them, because if you don't, you're just going to get passed by.
Yeah. And it is that simple. It's okay. You have one dentist that is coming out of school, and I was just had a podcast episode with Dr. Worley, and he
good guy.
Love him. I told him I think he was a comedian in his past life, because I was laughing the whole episode. But he was talking about how a dentist coming straight out of school that is willing to adapt and use technology versus a dentist that has been in the game for 25, 30 years that is not, while that dentist that is a veteran has better hand skills because that
Mhm.
can't be replaced, right?
Right.
At least not now.
Right.
The innovation side of it and how much quicker they're going to learn and grow and duplicate, and their revenue is going to triple and things like that with less stress, less time in the chair, less losing chair time on top of that, less overhead. They're going to be more successful no matter how good that dentist's hand skills are.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So,
and the one thing I want to say about, and you mentioned Isaac, I want everybody to know that Isaac is the chatbot portion of Trust AI, and it's free, so you can get a free account. When I started, I was by myself. I was a solo practitioner. There was no internet, and I had to figure everything out myself.
yeah.
And what I wouldn't have given to have something like Isaac, where I could say, I've got this situation, give it all the prompts and at least get advice from, a system that's knowledgeable. They can at least kind of help you make your decisions
Yep.
rather than just try to figure it all out yourself. I can't believe I ever did it, honestly.
No.
But yeah, you made me think about that when you said like a new dentist, getting out in the world and embracing the technology. It's mind blowing and game changing.
I know. I know. And
Yeah.
it's also it's going to make our highest standard of care global,
Yeah.
right? So the education is now going to be global instead of, well, you need to be in LA where they have all the best courses and you have all the funding and all the capital and all of these things.
Right.
And then there's someone in the middle of Zimbabwe in public health that
Yep.
needs to know this same education and they can't because they don't have those resources. That's not going to be a problem anymore,
See,
right?
yeah, I mean, I love that. I know I've done some webinars and I've actually gotten questions from folks, and I remember one specifically. I wish I could remember the doctor's name because I'd love to say thank you to him. But I got this question during the webinar, and he said something along the lines of, "It's like I have a question on such a. It's 2 a.m. here in Pakistan," and I was like, "You stayed up until 2 in the morning to listen to me?" I
Yeah.
wouldn't stay up till 2 in the morning to listen to. But the thing is, like you said, there's these people that they want to avail themselves of.
Mhm.
Well, if I say experts, then it makes me sound like I'm an expert and I'm far from it. But, they want to avail themselves of the knowledge that's out there. And they're like, I don't have access to that, at my local study club. I want to get it somewhere. And democratizing that and making that knowledge global to
Yep.
everyone in their language.
Mhm.
Wow, how incredible.
Everyone becomes a 25-year-old veteran.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Mhm. It's exciting.
Well, Loren, thank you. We're bumping up against an hour, so
I
we're
know.
with the magic point. We could probably talk for a week.
I think we probably could. Yeah, 100%. We'll solve all the world's problems.
We
Just wait
will, we will. But I want to thank you because you taught me a lot today about the human trafficking aspect of things. I'm really grateful for that. I hope that some people learned about it. Real quick before we sign off, tell people how they can find you.
The fastest way is to email me at this point.
Okay.
I'll give you a social media handle as well if you prefer to DM
Okay.
versus email, but you can
Yeah,
email me at support at connectwithloren, LOREN.com.
that's easy to remember.
Yes.
It really
And
is.
my Instagram is another way to follow along or learn what I'm doing or contact me. And the handle for that is from Loren with love, LOREN.
I love that.
Yeah, it's all
That's a really
encompassing.
good one.
It,
See, my
it's
my Instagram is Flucke. So yeah. No, not a lot of creativity there on it.
Well, for me, my personal brand is kind of, it's all encompassing, right?
Yeah.
It's not a lot of dentistry. It's more the human side of me and what I'm doing and
Yeah.
things like that. So yeah.
Super. Well, thank you, Loren. I appreciate it. You get a chance to check out one of her programs, gosh, be sure and do. You'll learn a bunch. So, Loren, thank you very much. Everybody, thank you all very much for spending the time with us. I'm Dr. John Flucke. This is the Technology Evangelist podcast. We're sponsored by Medidenta in this endeavor, and I'm grateful to them as well. We'll see you again. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.